We last spoke early November. It's been that long. A lot has happened since with holidays and blizzards and everything else. So good to be back with you again. Appreciate your time here tonight. I want to let you know I have just started the recorder for this meeting. We'll be recording this as we did in our first meeting, and that will be available to you um, probably first of next week. You'll be able to get on Metro's YouTube page and watch this. So if you have neighbors that weren't able to be here tonight or anybody who might be interested in this, feel free to direct them to this recording and they can watch the festivities. As we did back in November, we're going to give you just a little bit of an overview on the program. We're going to abbreviate that somewhat and get really straight to probably what you came to see, which is the final design, the final proposed design that we have for the traffic calming program. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback about that and any questions that you have before we progress the project any further. I'm going to turn on my chat room. So if you know how to use my chat window, if you know how to use that and would rather type a question, feel free to do that. Otherwise, I think you all have the ability to unmute yourself and ask a question as we go through this. I don't mind that at all. But if you're not speaking, if you would just keep yourself muted on your end, that might make it go smoother. I'm also going to stop my camera. Just wanting to see that I'm a real person, but to save bandwidth, I'll cut that off as we go through these slides. As we talked about last time, traffic calming is a residential program that the city administers. It is an application-based program. People someone has made a request for traffic calming on Page Road, as they do for all streets, and then we go through a process to prioritize those, and that's how Page was selected to be in the program. We really do focus on physical solutions, as we talked about last time. That's almost always speed cushions, and we showed you a concept for those, and we'll talk in a little more detail about that tonight. Focusing on speed reduction as opposed to trying to move traffic and get somebody to use a different street. Well, that's not really our objective. There have been some questions about that we'll talk about, but really our main goal is to keep traffic as much as we can where it is, but slow it down, make it operate more responsibly on your neighborhood street. We talked some about the different aspects of speed and speed enforcement and calming, and we know we're not the only game in town. NNTD plays a role, and some of the public policy advocates and so forth play a role with public service announcements and things about speeding, but we really focus on the infrastructure part and things that we can do within the right of way to bring about slower speeds on the street. We talked about a big part of the reason for that is, and this is Page is a great example, that people are actually trying to walk on these streets and do something other than drive. And so we know the impact that high speeds can have on those other types of road users, usually not in a good way. So if we can slow traffic down, it has a real positive outcome, not only on safety, but even just quality of life as you try to live and go about your business using the street. We talked about the in-demand nature of this program, how many applications that we do have. It's been a very popular program, very much in request, and we say that just to know that you're not alone out there. There are a lot of people around Davidson County who have had concerns about speeding on their street. That seems to be as high as ever. Our application list keeps getting longer. This last one, we're now over 500 streets. So you're unfortunately in good company when it comes to people concerned about speeding on their streets. We also talked about Hub Nashville being a great resource for things that may be a little bit outside of this program, but still maybe very much something that a service that Metro can provide, whether it's sometimes there's requests for additional stop signs or sidewalks or all of those kinds of things. I know Page has a long history with those things, and so Hub Nashville is still the best way to log those requests, and those folks will get those things to the proper Metro department and personnel. This was a slide we showed you last time, just showing the limits of the project page is that middle line with a big arrow pointing to it, running north-south through. And so our project goes all the way from Highway 100 down to Belmead Boulevard. The other purple lines in this picture are just streets that have applied for traffic calming as well. They've not been accepted into the program. This is a map that's available to you on the Nashville.gov website if you're interested in taking a closer look at that. And before I show you the plans, I want to remind you of some of the key tools that we'll be using. This is our bread and butter of the program. It's over the past couple of years, it's almost to the point where this is solely what we are using, and for good reason. It's a pretty effective tool. It's dependable in terms of it performs the same way on every street. They're durable, they hold up well, they stay looking nice. And so this is a product from a company called TrafficCalming that Metro uses on all streets currently. It's called a speed cushion, and we talked about how it performs, what it does. You're probably familiar with these by now and have encountered these on streets around town. They're deploying more and more of them all the time. We do have some ability in the design to change these, and by that, it's more about structuring how long of a speed cushion we select. We don't have many options, but we have a few. We can have a 7-foot, a 10.5 foot, and a 14 foot. The longer the cushion, the more gradual it is. I would guess I could say the less aggressive it is. The shorter the cushion, the 7 foot, the more aggressive it is, and that brings about a slower speed accordingly. Our default and what we're using in most projects right now is a 10.5 foot cushion. That's what we're recommending for Page Road. But we do have a little flexibility in that. It just gets to what is our target speed that we're shooting at, kind of the land uses that are around us, and those types of considerations. You see a couple of different.
Does that mean that's the 2 cushions? And you said that's what you're looking at. Is that the 2 cushion, one per lane?
That's not what I was referring to, but yes, ma'am, we are looking at a 2 cushion configuration. So I'll show you this picture here in a second, but it's going to look it would look a lot like the upper left-hand picture. So I think you have a center line on part of the road, but not all of the road. And so that would be the only difference. But yes, this road is not wide enough to do anything, to need anything more than that. And
so those two cushions would then be more restrictive than the one large cushion, because I think you said it was more graduated for less slope or less bounce, maybe.
Yeah, so
that correctly.
You may concede. So the point about there being a break in between cushions, as opposed to one longer speed hump, which we showed last time, it becomes more of a consideration on emergency vehicle access. And so that's why on almost every project we do now, we're using speed cushions as opposed to one long continuous speed hump.
So that one that it's shown in the photograph underneath the 2, that one is more restrictive for emergency vehicles. Is that what you said? Am I understanding correctly?
Well, let me clarify. The picture that you're looking at here on the bottom left is the same configuration as the one in the top left. It's just looking at an angle such that it may look like it's one continuous piece, but it's not. Yeah, it's just showing you the height of those speed cushions. But you're right. There is a different type of a treatment called a speed hump, where this is, instead of having that break in the middle, it would be like one big long continuous piece. And so those are used sometimes. Some of y'all have noted to me that those are being used over by the steeplechase in the parks. I know Parks is also using those in Shelby and probably other parks as well. They just have a little bit of a different consideration. Those would be more restrictive to emergency vehicles because they can't straddle those the way they can these. The point about having the brake in between the two is that vehicles with a wider wheelbase have an easier time straddling them. They can't straddle them totally, but they do reduce the impact if there's a break in like they have in these cushions.
Those where it's one large cushion, it appears that it's not as, and I guess I'm wrong because you're telling me I am. Those appear not to be as invasive maybe when you're in your car. I have a small car, so.
Well, it may, and I'll explain that further. It may, what you're seeing may absolutely be the case, because what that has to do with is how long is the project. So let's go back to how long is the device, is the speed cushion. So the picture on the lower left hand side, if you look at the length of that thing, that is a 10.5-foot cushion, meaning it's got a part that slopes up, it's got a flat part across the top, and it's got a part that slopes down. You can kind of see that in that picture. If you go to a 14-foot cushion, there would be another flat part at the top. So it would slope up, it would go flat, it would go flat again, and then it would slope down. That may be what you're driving on when you drive over those speed humps over in the park. It may be a 14-foot long. I think those come in 14 and maybe even 21 feet. And so that probably does feel more gradual because it is a longer device.
The ones
so
that I don't like are the ones on Overhill.
Those are probably the shortest ones. Yeah, those are probably the 7-foot cushion. That's right. So those do feel very aggressive. They're very abrupt.
Yes, I go to the street of least resistance, so I don't even go to Overhill anymore. You just run me a different direction.
So that's the difference. We'll look at the plan and the layout here in a second, but that's the rundown on the speed cushions, and that's what.
Can a pickup truck straddle the speed cushion?
They can come closer than an Accord or a Corolla can. It does depend on the bigger the vehicle, the closer it can come to straddling them. But we haven't found anything that can totally straddle them. I mean, there may be a Hummer out there that has a wheelbase wider than 6 feet, but it's pretty unusual, whatever that vehicle is.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my question, Jeffrey, around, with the 2 cushions versus the 3. If it's at 2, can a larger truck or SUV just actually move closer to the middle of the road and not even hit the cushion, where it's not actually slowing down cars? They're just going around it.
Right. Yeah, that's one of our big jobs in the design, and you see looks at it here, is to make sure that we go from edge to edge as much as we can, to not let somebody drive around or drive through these without having to encounter them. What people I'll tell you the best way to drive these in my opinion, and I drive a full size pickup truck. It's not huge, it's just a full size Silverado. If I drive them directly and try to straddle them, and so my 2 wheels are kind of going up on each edge of the speed cushion, and I stay in my lane and just try to straddle them, that's the best way I have found to drive them. I have to slow down, but it's a lot better than putting 2 feet on the center line and only hit. I mean, 2 feet, 2 tires on the center line and 2 tires on the speed cushion. It just doesn't feel very good. To me, it's much easier if I drive them straight over. And do what I can to straddle them. So I think that's what most people kind of catch on, but you still see people, you'll get behind them, and some people come almost to a stop and go very, very slow. And it's really not necessary. You can maintain 20 miles an hour in most cars and drive over those pretty effectively. So.
Mr. Hammond, this is Joe Hall in the 400 block of Page. Thank you for this meeting, and thanks for the attention on Page Road. I would note that the images that you have here, all of those possess a shoulder of sorts. that we don't have on Page. So
That's
I
right.
mean, that we have ditches like at the edge of our road. So I'm a bicyclist. We get lots of bicyclists in the neighborhoods getting through here. And I would ask you to think about that. I don't know what to do about that, but I just ask you to think about that and how they as they're moving through traffic with faster cars, that they've got a little bit of space on the edge of the road and don't have to go to the middle of the road. So that's an observation. And then I raised this issue last time. I think we all love our street. We love the beauty of our street. Please do not booger it up with a bunch of signs that say speed bumps. If there's an alternative way that your legal department can, cover liability with it, painted on the roadway or something else, please do not put up a ton of signs. And thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Earl, thank you for that. I'm gonna show you what we've come up with, and I want y'all's reaction to it. I want you to tell us if we went far enough, didn't go far enough, what you think. Let me this is just more before and after data. I covered it last time, and so here's the plan. The next few slides, I'm going to show you the actual design plan. We have not made these available on the website yet, but that would be it. Depending on what we hear tonight from you all, would be our next step, and so then you would have access to them and can see them in much more detail. But this is the design plans. This is the full run of Page Road from Harding Pike on the left of the picture over to Bellamy Boulevard on the right of the picture, and then some of the major streets there are labeled. It's still the same number of cushions that you saw. We haven't changed that. The spacing is still the same. You see from this view there are some gaps right here in between where it says sheet 3 and sheet 4. Seems to be a big gap. That's because there's an always stop there at West Time. So because you have that stop sign, there's really not a need for the speed cushion there. You have something similar over at Brookfield, a little bit of a gap there. Again, you got an always stop there. So otherwise, it's pretty consistent spacing of these speed cushions. It may look like a lot. This is a little bit of a longer type of a project, but we're still, we talked last time about the spacing of 400 to 500 feet in between. We're still in that. So let's just jump to the. We'll come back and we can talk about the placement if you want to. But let me address your question and comment about the signing. When we showed you this last time, I'm not sure we had a sign planned at every location, but pretty close to it, because NDOT's policy is that typically they don't want somebody turning on to the street, in this case Page Road, and not being warned that there is a speed cushion coming. And so because you got a lot of side streets, that meant there's a lot of opportunities to turn onto the street and not be warned by a sign. We heard you loud and clear that leads to a lot of signs. We don't disagree with that. And so we've come back and we've kind of modified our proposal. So on the Highway 100 end, we have one sign as you first turn on the Page from there. So you would still have a sign from that direction telling you that it.
Sorry, Jeff. What side of the road in that first block of Page? There's only houses on one side of the street. Are you proposing to put the sign on the golf course side of the street or on the residential side of the street?
It has to be on the residential side. That is kind of a requirement for traffic signage. It has to be on the right-hand side, just like a speed limit.
And so how far from that first speed cushion are you going to put that? I mean, that's going to be right in those front yards.
Well, yeah, it's in the front yards. Sometimes it's put directly at the location. That's usually done by NDOT signage crews. They kind of look at, are there other signs out there that need to be relocated, or are there telephone poles that would make, not that we hang it on the pole, we don't do that anymore, but sometimes they'll butt it up to that just to kind of minimize obstruction. So I can't tell you exactly how far, but
how far does it have to be from the speed cushion? Because I'm telling you right now, there's no, that's all open right there. There's no There's no existing signage. There's no telephone pole. That is just front yards.
Yeah. Well, and then they'll look at, coming out of that driveway, not putting something up that's going to be a site obstruction there. So, I mean, it's within 50 feet. It's probably closer to that. Sometimes we'll put them as we saw in this other picture, go back and find it, directly at the location of the speed cushion. They can go up to that. You wouldn't have it any further behind it, but it can be anywhere from the speed cushion location itself up to maybe 50 feet away, just depending on the.
And it's in my front yard, 113 page. Well, there's my vote. You get a no from me because it's right there in my front yard.
Yeah, so that we do have one planned at 40, and this is how you read
I
this.
see it. It says
north.
113 page road. That's me.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, the first one is at 103.
Yep, that's my house.
At 113.
So that's, I don't understand why you have to put these signs in people's yards. Like, I mean, it's just gonna totally, kill the aesthetics of the neighborhood, especially when you have a side of the street that has no residences on it.
Yeah.
Agree, Allison.
Let me go back and kind of give the bigger picture of the signage. So there's one at this end of the road, turning off, and then, excuse me, we don't have any others. We've removed all of them except for coming back from Belmead Boulevard, coming on this side. So the first cushions you would encounter, you would see signage at either end, and they just say speed cushions ahead, and then that covers all the rest of them. Now, the other thing that we did do, you see it on this slide here. There were a couple of places, I think it's West Tyne is one, and here at Forest Park is the other, where you do have an appreciable amount of new traffic that is coming onto Page that we felt like, some warning may be warranted, although not in a sign, because we know that's more visible and kind of detracts from things. So we have this where it says pavement markings, humps ahead pavement markings. And the way that would look is like here in this upper right hand block. It is a pavement marking. It's down on the street, just like any pavement marking is. Still gives a little bit of a warning that those are to come, but just not in the sign form. So we have those. We have one of those here as you turn from Cheekwood, from Forest Park, going back toward Belmead Boulevard. You have one coming from the same street going out toward Highway 100, and then you have them here again on either side of turning from West Tyne in either direction. There's one there, and there's one there. So that's how we've proposed to deal with that and removed all the rest of the signage from the project.
Jeffrey, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Okay, this is David McRae, and I appreciate the comments from the 100 block. I'm on the 200 block of Page. Am I hearing you correctly? What you just said was, and I agree with the 100 block Page, when you come from the BP, when you come from Harding, around that corner, which is a right-hand turn if you're headed toward Tyne, signs in that location, I can't believe that would be a good prospect for locations of sign anyway. But if you could put them on the road as if they were a left turn arrow or a right turn arrow, I think that would be fantastic and not get into the aesthetics of that turn as you come around Page. Is that what you're saying?
Well, in this one, the first one in the 100 block in front of 103 Page, we right now are proposing that would be a stand-up standard street sign.
Well, I think you need to think about that, because just the visual, and I'm thinking about even this week driving in the ice and looking at what's coming. Let's say you're coming from Harding and what's coming down past the golf course towards you, or vice versa. I think the visual of seeing where you're going right there is too important to put a 2x2, yellow sign in that
in the way of that. So that's my thought.
Okay.
Is it an option, Jeff, to make all the signage like the print that you can put on the road, similar to what you showed like over there by Cheekwood? I mean, could we have the print on the road instead of the yellow sign in people's yards?
I think people pay attention to that more than they do side signage anyway.
Yeah, there is guidelines that, kind of a national signage that deals with traffic signage and how you deal with traffic control devices like this. Sometimes they give some leeway and sometimes they don't. I would have to go back and reread it. Is it mandatory that you have these? I think it's a little more than a suggestion that you do. I think it's recommended that you do. And so there's got to be a pretty good reason about why you wouldn't post something like this, at least bookending the project as we've done. But if there's any leeway there that you could even back off of having even one of these signs at the beginning of the project and go totally to a flat pavement marking, we can look at that. But I think these conditions that we're seeing here are a really good case in point about why in some times, I know this is pretty rare what we're going through now with the snow, but in some cases it's good to have that sign. But
well, it sounds like
I'll say, Jeffrey, I'm sorry, Allison, but to Allison's point, if you are leaving Harding Road and coming up toward the 200 block of Page, and there is a sign in her front yard, it is blocking my view of the traffic coming at me by the golf course. If you put a sign on the golf course side, it is blocking my view of the guys playing number 5 at Belmead.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And we'll certainly look at that. I'll be glad to take another look at that, and we'll talk to NDOT more about it and see, we feel like that is a site obstruction or anything more than an aesthetic consideration. I totally hear you. Given everybody's druthers, they'd rather not have that in their yard for sure. But we'll be glad to take another look at that.
Hey Jeff, this is Battle Williford. I'm in the 200 block, and just hear what everybody's saying on this. But I remember at the last meeting, Angie Henderson suggested that a sign comes out at the would be present like closer to the gas stations, almost like out of the residential part, but like just saying speed hump ahead. And I've seen some suggestions to that in your presentation here. But why couldn't you just have something that's really out of everybody's residential space, closer to the commercial space, that just say speed bumps ahead?
It's a good thought, and it may even be that we can do speed cushions next mile, or have something that kind of articulates the fact that it's coming up and it's going to be with you for a little while. Yeah, let us look at that, and maybe we can. I think this goes back to the very first question that was asked. How far can it be? I think I understand why you're saying that now. If we can spread that out and push it out toward the commercial area and still get the signage in, get that communicated, might that be okay? That's certainly something we can take a look at.
Jeff, this is Joe Hall again. I think a little bit of context here. The traffic that we get on Page Road is largely the same traffic every day that's excessive, and they know that it's a cut-through street to Williamson County or to CPA. Not to pick on CPA, it's the same people, and the day after these things are in, they're all gonna know these speed humps are here. So I do think that's an important context. And then if you're gonna add some signs, why don't you take some down as a give back to the community? There's one at the corner of Page at Bell Park or Forest Park, whatever it's called, that says no speeding. Well, can we take that one down? I mean, because people are speeding.
Yeah. Possibly. I'll take a look at that and make a note of that. As they install these, we see if there's just frivolous signs that are not needed. And you said that one is near Forest Park?
Yes, it's near Forest Park.
Okay. All right, I'm getting a request here to annotate from Andrew Montgomery. I'm going to approve that. I don't know what this is going to do, Andrew, but have at it.
Yeah, that was a mistake on my end. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
okay. All right. Thought you were going to draw something for us.
No, that would have been nifty.
Jeff, I guess it sounds like from what you said that they're, these signs are somewhat of recommendations or best practices, which, we understand. But if there's wiggle room in that where, to someone's point, these are the same people driving down here all the time. It's the same, lawn crews, the same people cutting through, they know that there's going to be speed humps. Like, let's work with us to try and get something that is just not going to be super offensive to look at, and also, not obstruct views of oncoming traffic as well. And let's try and potentially come up with some alternatives.
Just trying to be creative.
Understood. I will say, I mean, we took a lot of signs off. Some of, and we didn't have those on there just because we thought, those weren't necessary. I think this was an attempt to try and hear the comment the first time. Sounds like there's still concern over even one sign, and so we'll go back and see if there's not a way to at least move that, or if there's, do away with it possibly. Going back to the comment about is it discretionary, there obviously is some of that in here because we took away a lot of those already. I do think though that there is some requirement, and I will go back and look at the language of that manual that requires or strongly suggests that you do have a little bit of warning from a signage standpoint. But I hear you. I think we'll see if we can.
Is that a Metro manual? Metro put it together, or who put it together?
No, it's a federal manual by the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's called the long name Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. And it's something every jurisdiction is bound by. It's the reason stop signs are red and green lights are green.
So Metro adheres to it on our city street. Why?
Correct. Yeah, because it's uniformity. So if you go to California, warning signs there are going to be yellow just like they are here. The reason is because we all follow that same manual. And so we all have the same expectations in this country about white lines are white and yellow lines are yellow. And we all know what that means. It's the manual that defines that for us.
Jeffrey, I think the difference between what you're showing on this current picture and where I'm not sure who made the point earlier, but if that sign is sitting in the parking lot of White's Mercantile now, or that commercial area, I mean, it's probably 50 yards difference. Like it will achieve the same effect without being in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I mean, there is a limitation. You couldn't have it a mile down the road, but I think you're on something.
Right.
That's something we'll take a look at for sure.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, this is Andrew Montgomery again. There is, after that BP gas station, a car service business, and there's a little grassy area patch there where they'll put out different blow ups given the season, Halloween, Christmas, whatever. But there is this sort of grassy area in front of that business on the roadside that could potentially be utilized for a sign, and that wouldn't be putting it in someone's front yard. So just wanted to call that area out as a place I've seen where a sign could potentially go.
Okay, sure, thanks.
And that would also be on the correct side of the road, because you said it has to be on the non-golf course side.
Right. Any other aspects of the thing? I'll be glad to go through these one by one if you like, or you can kind of see they're spaced out.
If you wouldn't mind showing the 200 section of page, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, let me go back to the beginning. So from the end of the project, the first one was we noted was at 103 page, and then coming on around the curve there at 113. And then the last one before West Hine is at 123. So that's funny, they all end in 3. And then you have the always stop at West Hine. And then that brings us into the 200 block. So the first one there coming from West Hine is at 206, thereabouts, Page Road. And then at 214. And by the way, you can see here the distance from the driveways. We really try to maximize that and get it away from everybody's driveway as far as we can. So I think here we keep it, pretty good distance in almost all cases.
So at 206,
now
there will be, what you're proposing here is there would be markings on the pavement, but there would not be a sign. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Got it. Okay.
And so that's to cover the people turning from West Hine going toward Cheekwood. They would see, that's who would see that.
Can you proceed to the 300 block?
Sure. I'll keep going here. So 214, and then that brings us to, again, the always stop there at Brookfield. And then once you continue on past Brookfield, you're in the 300 block, and the first one is at 310. I think there were more driveways in that first section, so we had to push it just a little bit. So 310, and then next one, and then you go past Cheek Road, and the next one is at 407 page. So there's only one in the 300 block, kind of a shorter block, and then 407. Continuing on, there's one at 414, just before you get into the curve. And then you pass Forest Park. And then the next one is at 420. Oops. And then the last one is at, it's right at that brick wall before Page kind of flattens back out to go to Belmead. I've got it in front of an address that's actually Belmead Boulevard address. It's 1211 Belmead Boulevard, but it's at that north end of that brick wall there. These are labeled so that contractors can find landmarks and things. And then the last page of the plans is more of this detail sheet. And so going back to the comment about spacing and that shoulder width, which is a very good comment, this shows how we would lay these out. Page is only 20 feet wide. The cushions are 6 feet wide. So by the time you get 2 of those, that leaves us 8 feet of pavement. So there's not enough room for anybody to drive around them. I'm not concerned at all about that. I guess the only thing is that does put it fairly close to the edge of the road. We would typically space these 4 feet apart in the center, and then that leaves us with 2 feet on the edge of the road. It's okay from a traffic standpoint and all. We recognize there are people walking along the street and all, but I don't know how else to shift that. You can still, in 2 feet, you can ride a bike through there without having to go up and over the speed cushion. But anyway, just
Jeffrey, I would say that within 2 weeks of the time that you put these speed humps out, there will have been 20 cars in the ditch, and that will enunciate the reason that the 200 and 300 block of Page roads are such a mess.
By that you mean people like purposefully would try to drive around them, or what do you mean in the ditch?
No, because yeah, they're going to drive around it, but not realize that there is no room for error on that.
No. Yeah, would certainly hope not.
That's a separate conversation, but we have two issues on Page Road. I do love this plan because I do think, and someone mentioned it earlier, the people that use this as a cut through are going to feel the impacts of it very quickly. And that may take some of the pressure off of Page Road, but so I do appreciate this call.
Well, this is a pretty standard layout for, we've done it on streets, as narrow as this and some narrower. We got one in East Nashville, I think it's a 16-foot wide road. And so, we have, this is a pretty standard layout. We're pretty comfortable with it. We recognize the ditches and the big trees and the, rock walls and all the things that make this street beautiful. They exist and they could be a hazard on the side of the road, but we're pretty comfortable with the layout.
Don't misunderstand me. I love it because as where you have these laid out, at least on the 200 block of Page Road, I know that every truck driver and every person that cuts through here is going to hate it, and that's why I like it.
Yeah.
So.
I just wanted to ask, when do you think this will be put in place?
That's a good question. Let me go to that. Here's a little bit of information on the next steps. I'll go back to some of those other slides because we do need to talk about the ballot process. But from tonight's meeting, we'll go back and we'll spend a little time taking a look at that signage issue. But we will finalize the final design plans, and then that's going to kick off this online ballot voting block that you see here that says 6 weeks. I'll talk more about that. That's a 6-week time period. Assuming it passes, if it passes the ballot, NDOT would then order the materials and then kind of begin scheduling for the construction process. Right now, those materials, they could probably be here in 4 months, but there is such a backlog of projects, they're probably not going to order them right away. And the long and short of all of that is, the answer to the question is, after the voting, it's at least a year away. We're seeing that with every project we've got. So I say that, I'm sorry if that's bad news, but it's real news that just this, you're not going to be driving over speed cushions by Easter. So I don't want you thinking that. It's probably a year from that point, unfortunately.
Question on the voting.
Mm-hmm.
You'll send out ballots to everyone whose property touches basically Page Road, whether it's the front side or whatever. I guess those would be the only two, front or side. Well, I guess it could be back. So you have to get 50% plus yeses in order for this to pass. Is that 50% of the total that you send out or the total that you receive back that respond?
The total that we receive back. But let me back up a little bit and kind of walk through that process. So we're here tonight at meeting 2, this red circle. The next thing we have in front of us is the online ballot. And then after that, if it does pass, we would go into that construction phase that we're talking about. So a little bit about the online ballot, and I'll get to who gets to vote in just a second. But we will be sending out these ballot cards to eligible voters by mail. Like hopefully a lot of you received something for tonight by mail. It'll look very similar to that, but it'll have a little bit of different information on it. It'll have a website, it'll have a number you can call, and it'll have this QR code, all of which will get you to the ballot page. And so you'll pull that up, you'll enter your information, who you are, where you live. There's a little unique code that just kind of our little homemade security feature to make sure, the people we intend to vote are voting. And you vote, you want it or not. It's as simple as that. And so it also links to the set of design plans, so you can get in there and look in as much detail about what the project consists of, so that you know how you want to vote. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, we take all of those. It's all online. It's just it generates a big spreadsheet for us. And so we take all of that, and at the end of that 6 weeks, and we look at, of all the people that voted, did 2/3 of them, it's not 50%, it's actually 66% have to vote in favor of the project. And if it is that or more, we'll move ahead with the project. So that's how that voting occurs. The people that get to vote was part of that question as well. And I know this is a little bit grainy. It's kind of a screenshot here from the web page that we use, but we will do a survey of all of the. By that I just mean we'll get these are the people that get to vote. If you own property that abuts the right of way of Page Road within the project limits, that's a mouthful. You'll get the opportunity to vote. And so you kind of see that here. So houses on the corner, you may have a Cheek Road address, but if your property, your side yard property abuts Page, we consider you to own property along the frontage of the road, so you'd get the chance to vote. If you're one house off, you won't, because your property does not abut. So that's how that works. I think there are a couple of HPRs, the horizontal property situations that have been constructed. So that just means two houses on one lot down on the other end, the northern end of the project. Both of those owners get to vote. They own the property in common that does abut the road, so they get to vote. None of the commercial properties down on the Harding end would vote. We won't send those to businesses. I don't think there's any churches or institutions or anything like that. So otherwise, it's if there's anybody that owns more than one piece of property, we only ballot them one time. So regardless of how many parcels you own, if any of these are vacant lots, and that's just as defined by the Metro, property assessor. If they don't think there's a house on it, we're not going to ballot it. And I think probably everything has an improvement of some sort on it. But anyway, that's it. That's who gets to vote and how that voting process goes. And that would kick off after we get that design plan finished, and would send those postcards out after that. Any other questions about the voting?
Yes, Jeff, I have a question. Will we see the full signage plan and the placement of the plan in advance of that vote?
So there's kind of two parts to that question. In advance of the vote, it normally all comes out about the same time. So we will modify the signage if we can, and NDOT approves it and we all like it. Typically, we wouldn't get back together for another meeting. And so we would just post it online, and then you would see it. You would certainly see it in advance of casting your vote. So all that happens about the same time. That would be made available. There was another part to the question I was going to answer.
Well, just to put a finer point on that, if you've talked about some options for maybe putting some stuff in the roadway,
sure,
about bumps and all that kind of stuff. But if, let's say, the Metro Legal Department goes another direction and says, no, you know what, we got some liability issues here, we're going to put signs up and down Page Road. I'm just speaking for myself. I would want to know that before I vote.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think the speeding's a safety hazard around here, but if you're going to tell me that you're going to put up signs up and down Page Road everywhere there's a speed bump, I'll think about it a lot differently.
Yeah. No, I understand, and that made me remember the other part of that question, which is typically kind of like the first question was asked, and I didn't have a great answer for exactly where are these signs even being placed, and that's because The signage that goes along with these, we typically don't even include schematics or dimensions or anything on where these signs go. It comes back to the NDOT folks when they're out there installing them. They're looking at driveways and where, in their judgment, those signs need to go. What I can commit to you though is I hear that is a real sticking point for this project. We need to nail that in a little bit more before you all are comfortable with the proposal, and so we'll go back and we'll do more than we do on most projects, which is actually lay those signs in. That may include moving some others out. I don't know. I'll just have to see on that, but really being very clear on where we want those signs to go as part of this project. Not something we normally do, but it sounds like something we need to do on this one so that you all feel comfortable about where. And then legal and all, they don't get involved in design plans. Once it's on that design plan, it is a project of NDOT. It's not going to change significantly. Now, I guess anything can happen with the guy that's out there driving the post in the ground. So there are inspectors and all, but you all will stay diligent on that as well. But anyway, that's the best we can do at that point, is make sure the design plans show it accurately.
Jeffrey, had a quick question. Earlier you showed sort of the dimensions of the speed bumps, and it looked like there was a yellow line that went through both of them. Right. Is there gonna be a yellow line painted on the street, or the bumps just gonna be on the street? Because currently we don't have sort of a middle line running down Page since they repaved it a few years ago.
Yeah. No, there won't be. I think there is. I think part of the street does have yellow line on it. Part of it does not. We're not changing that. So if it's there, we leave it. If it's not, we don't add it. But yeah, this figure just shows it, and it's kind of, again, for contractor that says, look, you find the center line and you go 2 feet on either side, and that's where the edge of the speed cushion is, to make a total gap of 4 feet. So
got it. So they're not going to be adding yellow lines. They would add the humps ahead on the road, but they wouldn't be adding a center line.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks for confirming.
Sure.
Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm. I'm here. I hear you.
Yes. This is Barry Fowler. Jeffrey, let me get away from my other phone. What about powerful interests that might decide that they wanted to object to this? When would they have their voice?
Typically that comes in the voting process, and that's why we do that, to make sure everybody's got a chance to say if they're for it or say if they're against it. And so, yeah, they could certainly do that in that voting process.
Okay, so nobody outside would have the ability to object.
Anybody can try to convince a voter any way they want to. We don't get involved in that. And so you may have, I mean, we've had some cases in the past where there have been kind of like little mini campaigns, and they, want to try to influence it. I mean, and I think that's okay. It's a neighborhood discussion, and Metro is kind of here saying, we're here to serve. If it's something that the neighborhood wants and is in favor of it, we'll do it. If there's a a lot of people that are not so sure about this, that's okay too, and they'll vote against it. And this is the fairest way we know to kind of get the neighborhood's pulse on such a project. But no, that's as much as I can say. Is we'll send those ballots out and we receive those, and we've never had a case where there's been any other influence of the vote one way or the other. By the way, the voting results from past projects, if you're interested, they make all of those public. They're on the website, and you can see. Typically when a project gets to this point and they vote, the lion's share of those by far vote for it, but there's no guarantee. Some fail for sure.
Okay, that's the answer to my question. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Did you address Mr. Hall's point about the bikes? I'm a little concerned about that. I hadn't even thought about bikes, about bicycles, but that's an excellent point.
Yeah, it is. So this slide here is probably the best we can do, because the cross section, meaning the width of Page Road, is pretty consistent from one to another. It's right about 20 feet. And that's a pretty narrow street. It's on the narrow side. It's not unusually narrow, but it is on the narrow side of what we've worked with. And the image that you have in the upper left-hand corner of this shows how we would situate those cushions in the lane. So they're 6 feet wide, and we would essentially center those in the lane. That leaves 2 feet from the outside edge of the speed cushion to the shoulder of the road. And so, I mean, most cyclists can ride in that 2 feet and not have to go up and over a cushion, but there's certainly, a bicyclist is certainly well within their rights to take the lane and ride in the middle of the street if in the lane if they need to be safe. But generally, they're supposed to stay to the right-hand side. They can certainly do that. I don't know that it changes their riding situation a lot beyond what it is right now, other than hopefully the cars that are going to pass them are doing so, slower, because now they're having to navigate these speed cushions. But we don't, when I say we go edge to edge, all I mean by that is we make it so that a car cannot drive around speed cushions without at least putting 2 wheels on them. I don't literally mean edge to edge with nowhere to walk,
And maybe in that second block, and I don't know about the third and fourth, I'm in the first, maybe you put them closer to the middle there's nowhere for the bike to go. You've got 2 feet on one side, but you've got a ditch on the other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we encountered this problem prior?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We've done several on streets this narrower, a couple that are even narrower. I don't know. We have not gotten a lot of complaints from people that say, it's running me off the road or it's pushing me somewhere. I still think, if I'm driving and I'm overtaking a bicycle, what I will do now is I will kind of cheat out toward the middle of the street and drive around them. I don't think this necessarily does anything to change that. I think if I'm still overtaking a bicycle, I'm still going to drive in the middle of the road, and I'll just go over the 2 speed cushions, as in a way as if they weren't there. I don't think anything about the placement of these requires a car to maintain their lane strictly and not veer over to give somebody, safety when you're overtaking them.
I guess I'm not as concerned about Mr. Hall, although no offense. We have a lot of children that ride in this neighborhood. That's my bigger concern, is that the kids will not know how to handle that as an adult would. I don't know. Y'all think through that. That's a little bit of a concern for me, for children riding bikes.
Yeah. Any other questions or concerns? Those are good ones.
Jeffrey, this is Barry again. About what time will the new draw up be available on the website?
I would say give us about two weeks.
Okay, and which website would it be now?
Let me show you this. So there's my contact information, as well as the one on the top is, it looks like kind of a general NDOT email address, which it is, but that's because multiple people check that. So that's a good email address. If if you got concerns, feel free to send anything to them or to me or to both. If you have follow-up questions. And here is the website. So you can, if you've got a phone handy and want to scan that, you can, or the website is down here at the bottom, TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And that's where this meeting will be posted. There'll be a link to it. That map that I showed you is on there, and this is where all of the ballot results are from other projects if you're interested in that, and the design plans will ultimately be posted at that website.
Okay, the same one we got on the card.
Yes, sir. Sure is. Okay. You just have to kind of scroll down through there. You got a lot of different options of information you can get, and one of those is see the final design plans for a project. But I'd say, yeah, about 2 weeks, we'll look closer at that signage issue, see and then really nail those 2 sign locations in better, and then post it.
Any data that you have on where, if this actually lessens traffic on our road, and if it just sends it to other avenues?
Oh, I don't think we have any before and after data. I'm scrolling back through here about does traffic get diverted? People ask that a lot, and what I typically tell them is it very well may. It's really hard to predict on the front end how much, if any, is going to divert off of this street and go somewhere else. But I would say like this: you guys drive it way more than I do. You drive it multiple times a day. If you ever get on Page Road and you're behind a slow-moving car, are the conditions such, meaning like where you're going and how far it is out of the way and whatever else, that you would ever just say, forget this, I'm taking West Tyne, or I'm taking Brookfield, or I'm taking Cheek Road, I'm going around because this car in front of me is going too slow. If you find yourself doing that, then I would say there's a good chance that there's going to be some appreciable diversion of traffic off of Page Road, because that just tells me it's just as easy to use another street without speed cushions, and therefore I'll do it. But if you say, no, that's too far out of the way, I don't know who would do that just because a car's going a little slower than I am. I just sit tight and I just go down the road like normal.
I don't think
it's
the slow road. I don't think it's the slow traffic. I think it's the speed humps.
Well, that's what I mean. But is it such an inconvenience to go over them, whereas it's not an inconvenience to use another street? I don't have a feel for it. Is it that much more advantageous to use Cheek Road to get out to Harding? I don't drive it that often. I don't know. You guys know. So
I don't use Overhill.
Yeah. So and that's why every neighborhood's a little different. Some have better, parallel routes that it's just as easy. I don't see a great parallel route to Page. Nickel goes part of the way and Hetty goes part of the way. But also it depends on where you're coming from and where you're trying to get to too. I'll tell you another thing that makes a difference is Page has a signal on it. I think Hetty has a signal on it out at Harding, but that's about your only 2 opportunities. Everybody else, you just got a stop sign and you take your chances turning on it. So I think the presence of that signal kind of attracts traffic to Page, because they know they can access the major street a little easier. So it's hard. It's really hard for me to say that, you're going to see less traffic, and more importantly, we're going to push it to some other street. I hope not. If you guys want less traffic, that's great. But our goal is not to push it somewhere else. We just want it to slow down. Well, again, I appreciate everybody. I'm glad this wasn't an in-person. Normally, I like in-person meetings, but I'll tell you, we don't want to be out traveling around in this weather. It's been a kind of a tough couple of days. So hopefully this was at least a break from watching reruns on TV, if nothing else, some entertainment. But I appreciate everyone's time tonight and great questions and interest in the project and concern about the project. I think that's very healthy and very warranted, and we appreciate the opportunity to work on it, but we want to make sure we get it right for you guys who have to live with this. So feel free to reach out to me and or the NDOT folks with any other questions you think of. And in the meantime, we're going to be nailing in that sign location and getting these plans back out to you so you can take a look at them and moving it on.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for all you're doing here. You got a lot of projects going.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, we do. So we'll try to we'll try to be as efficient as we can and get you in the queue. And then if it passes, try to work on cutting down that year of lag time in between. Thank you all for your time this evening. I hope everyone has a good night and a safe weekend. Thank you.
Jeff.
Jeff.
Really appreciate it.